Knock, knock.
Who's there?
Shoot you all.
Shoot you wahoo!
Paint the town red or I'll shoot you all. Now get to work.
Yeah, I guess we watched High Plains Drifter again for whatever reason. Welcome to season 14.
Plains Drifter.
That's cinema, baby.
Been talked to death before by middle-aged white dudes podcast or young white dudes podcast, Thomas and I.
No, Mr. Wilson. I don't have to take that kind of talk from anyone.
That's right, you don't. How about going outside and trying to kick me around?
I'm not supposed to fight with the guests, Mr. Wilson.
I'm not a guest tonight, you yellow bastard. I happen to be an intruder.
Hello, and welcome to The Good, The Pod, and The Ugly, a film podcast where we pair movies to garner a better understanding of the filmographies of notable directors or actors. Or we do what we're doing this season. I'm one of your hosts, Thomas.
I'm your other co-host, Ken.
I'm a co-host, and my name is Ryan. I'm very clear on what we're doing this season.
Okay, and we are joined by Jack, who was an original co-host and the person who picked this week's movie. Do you want to explain what we're doing this season, Thomas? Well, you are. Whether you say yes or no, you are.
Oh, okay. You're just putting me on the spot. No, typically this we do a deep dive of a single person's paired films. But what we're doing this season, because Ken just came back from Hawaii, and we're here to demonstrate the point that there's a productive level of cocaine, and then everything else after that's a good idea. Anyhow, we're pairing one film we've covered as a pod, and then but because we have a new co-host, Ryan, he hasn't covered all of our previous, 13 seasons. He hasn't been on all of it. And so what we're going to do is we're going to pair a movie that Ryan hasn't seen every week with a weekly rewatch of She-Devil. So this week pairing with She-Devil is High Plains Drifter, which we covered. Well, I'll turn it over to Jack because he's the one who wanted to do a rewatch with Ryan.
Yeah, we covered this some years ago when we originally started this podcast, burning through all of Eastwood's filmography. And I am being told by our sound guy that we originally covered it on season 2, episode 6 in the good year of our Lord 2020.
Yeah.
So go back and go back and listen to that if you want to.
I wouldn't. The audio quality is so bad.
It's not bad.
And you had this real jackass on as a guest host.
Was that your first episode, Thomas?
I think it was. I think it was it that and Lightfoot? No, it was High Plains Drifter paired with
Mystic River.
Oh, man. Yeah, I better forgotten.
Yeah, so I was informed that I had to go back and listen to the original episode, which was not part of the deal when I signed on to this season. But I tried. I gave it a valiant effort this morning, and I made it about 30 seconds in. But by golly, I can't stand to listen to myself talk. So
it was listed in the terms and conditions that you clicked off on. So,
well, I don't read those. I don't think anyone does.
I listened to that whole episode, Jack, and I thought you guys handled yourselves very well. It was lovely to go back and listen to such an early episode, and totally bizarre considering when it was recorded and what you all were doing with your lives.
We've had over almost 180 episodes now. We've covered between 300 and 400 films. So that is a lot to sift through for each of us to kind of pick two movies. And I guess the first big question is, Jack, out of all of those, why was this one of the movies that you chose?
Because I originally had a bit of an adverse reaction to it. I think not only tonally, but some of the actual content in the movie I was not on board with. But in the years since watching, as happens with films a lot, which is part of the magic of watching movies, is it lives on in your memory as something different than when you're actually actively experiencing it.
Yeah.
And so when I think back to High Plains Drifter, having not seen it for almost 5 years now, I think of all the stuff that's really stuck with me aesthetically, and the feeling that the movie invokes is really, really strong and really powerful. And it's like thinking back on it, I'm like, man, is this like one of my favorite Eastwoods? Because the imagery and the music and everything that it invokes is extremely long lasting.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to see if I would like it a little bit more, if I had a different approach to it this time, having seen a lot of movies,
no spoilers,
a lot of art.
Oh, stay tuned for Jack.
Yeah, sure.
New opinion.
Sure.
All right, let's go around the horn. What did you think of this film, Jack, on your rewatch? So, High Plains Drifter, 1973. Same year we covered, well, not the same year we covered, but it came out the same year of another film we covered called Torso. Whenever we did a 4x4 that had Sergio Martino.
Yeah, with Eric.
Yeah, and then we also, well, you all would have covered, I wasn't on the episode, Breezy, because Eastwood also starred and directed that in the same year.
No, he didn't star in that.
Oh, no?
It was Johnny Wildbunch was the star.
William Holden is in that, right?
Yeah, Bill Holden.
It seems like the most atrocious film, and also very much like William Holden's actual life, as reflected in the motion picture.
It's not so good.
It's so good in which it's the standout oddity in Eastwood's career that you must see if you're a completionist.
Huh. Well, I'm actually going to put it on my list then, Jack. Thank you.
But it's a terrible movie.
Please
don't
do not put it on your list. William Holden is such like a hard 49-50. It made me feel better about my own aging process. He looks like Kramer in the episode where Kramer starts the smoking lounge in his apartment and his face gets all wrinkly, his teeth are all yellow.
Which you can hear more about on our sister podcast. What's a funny name for a Seinfeld? It's not funny anymore.
Oh.
Okay. Never mind.
Yeah, go ahead and insert a joke in here later.
Okay.
So we'll edit that out for sure. So the reason not to watch Breezy is because somebody looks like the Crypt Keeper, or because you'll get onto the watch list if you.
It's a love story between a teenage girl and a man who looks like he's 70,
and it's beautiful.
And
okay, so it's better. So it's better than our canceled co-stars whenever we did. And we'll talk about this regularly. She-Devil and Manhattan together.
Yeah, that was a great one. Roseanne Barr and Woody Allen, two great tastes.
But if I remember right, Woody Allen's movie was celebrating a 17-year-old turning 18 while he's dating her.
Yes, and the search for a stuffed animal that she wants for her 18th birthday. All right, that was a great episode, guys.
Well, I agreed to rewatch this because we canceled my idea for a Miso Von Horny season where we watch Buddy Van Horn movies and Magnus Von Horn movies.
That could still happen.
I don't even know who those people are, but I'm signed up.
Buddy Van Horn?
Buddy Van Horn?
He gets ripped.
The name is familiar, but I can't put a face to it.
And then Magnus Van Horn has a few movies that have come out in the past few years, including The Girl with a Needle, which I did not watch last year.
So Ryan, you listened to the High Plains Drifter episode that Jack was supposed to listen to.
And then I went
recap.
Yeah.
Can you recap for our listener of what our take was on it? Both Jack, I, and Thomas.
Ken really loves this film. In all of its ragged early 70s glory, and couldn't completely understand Jack's struggle with the tone. Jack was understandably and rightly disturbed by the sexual assault scene that occurs very early in this film and is handled in a very early 70s way, and we'll talk about it when we get into the movie more. But and from that point on, the cognitive dissonance, it sounded like that scene created for Jack made it impossible for him to fully embrace the other elements of the movie, which he obviously was very struck by, as he said that was apparent in the episode. And then Thomas, I believe you like this movie quite a bit as well, but not as much as Ken.
Yeah, I think that's a fair, giving it a re-listen as well. That's fair. I think the thing that Jack kept saying during the episode, which we're sparing you with this season. You don't have to go back and listen to the old episodes. We have sound quality now. We have the boards. We'll have photos and videos up of us in our recording studio as opposed to calling in from prison, which I had to do for a while. Or Jack recording at the airport in the bathroom stall. I think the thing that Jack kept saying was the movie wants this person to be a cool guy, but I can't be on board with him being a cool guy, this being Eastwood, after I see him grab the woman, drag her into a stable, throw her on some straw, and have his way with her.
And I think it's important to ravish her. She seems pretty thankful for the experience by the end of it.
Yeah, in the 1970s way.
Yeah,
yes.
I'll talk about what Alex Cox said about that later on when we get to our reactions.
Very good. So the plot of High Plains Drifter is a High Plains drifter drifts into the town Lago.
On the High Plains.
From the High Plains. It's a mining town right on a beautiful location in, I think it's Mono Lake.
Yes.
You have to go. You have to go there for an entire month, but you can't do anything at Mono Lake. And
it used to be Dual Lake, but then the mining concern drained it.
This is a town full of scared, feckless people who want to protect their interest in being part of a mining town and the money presumably involved. And then a year earlier, some guys who work for the mining concern whipped and killed the marshal who had found out some things about the lease of the land not being kosher, and he was going to turn them in. And this drifter runs into town, and the bad guys who killed the original marshal, somehow they went to prison. They say they got cuffed when they were asleep. And they want this new guy who comes in and ravishes a woman to save them and protect them from these hooligans who are getting out of the local prison.
Yeah, because that drifter kills the original 3 people who were going to protect them.
While he's getting and then the drifter turns out to slowly torture in a myriad of ways every single person in the town, possibly other than the midget Bartleby and Vera Miles, who is the wife of who's her husband?
The saloon keeper, the hotel keeper. I don't know. Names or actors. So I think I actually, as I'm recalling, yes. I think I said that was like Purim, the Jewish high holiday.
Yes.
In the original episode, because he gets or like Carnival or other things where the status of the town flips because Malachi, the little person, gets to become sheriff and mayor, and the institution gets flipped on its head. The hierarchy is leveled.
The last
the Native Americans get the blankets that they want and the candy. Yeah, and so he subverts the entire town, which I guess on this watching, the plot seemed a lot simpler for the, I guess, ghost story of the town.
Yeah,
but it became a little bit more confusing. Like I think you just stumbled on a little bit there, Ken. For the 3 who are locked up because of ingots, and why would a mining concern have ingots? And how all those machinations happened to put them away, and why the townspeople would do it in that manner. All that just like the backstory seemed a little fuzzier. Giving it another watch within the last 5 years.
I would push back on the idea that he treats the saloon innkeeper's wife in any capacity that any better than anyone else in the town. I don't think that's true at all. I think the little guy's the only one he actually gives a pass to, because he's the only one that seemed innocent in the original undertaking of the Marshall character.
Yeah,
he might give a pass to the little dude, but he gets a hall pass from the innkeeper.
Yes. We probably talked about on the original episode the original script by Ernest Tidyman of Shaft fame, who also wrote a novel, Dean Reesner, who Eastwood worked with quite a bit, did the final polish on the script. And there's some discussion that in the original script and book that Eastwood's character is the marshal's brother. When we see the flashbacks, and the first flashback to the whipping is amazing. Some of Bruce Surtees's best work, cutting to the townspeople in deepest, darkest shadows, just sitting there watching. It's terrifying. In the movie, you're never really sure. You think it might be Eastwood that's getting whipped, and at the end, it certainly indicates that he was a ghost the entire time.
Yeah.
But my problem, I think I expressed last episode, was if he's a ghost the entire time and he looks like himself, how do people not recognize him? It's not like he's possessing, I don't know, Jumping Jack Flash to walk around to seduce Demi Moore.
Yeah, this was interesting listening back to, because it was only the third time maybe that I saw this movie that I realized that he was supposed to be the ghost of the dead sheriff. I had always thought that he was more just an avenging angel, taking revenge, but not necessarily the manifestation of that particular spirit. Though now I see that I think it is supposed to be read that way.
Yeah, and Thomas, on a practical level, I think you're right. But the whole thing about the spirit doesn't rest until his name's on a tombstone, and that being one of the final shots, his name finally on the tombstone, seems to make it pretty clear.
What, that he's a ghost?
Yeah.
Or that he's the same person? I don't think he appears as the same person. I think he appears as the store brand version. or no, actually, he's the beautified version. He gets a glow up with death.
Yes.
Because Buddy Van Horn, again, if we only had that Miso Von Horny season, we could talk a lot more about this, but he's not as attractive as a man as Clint Eastwood.
Not even close. But the way it's shot, it's kind of hard to tell.
Yeah.
In some certain angles, you're not sure.
And I think that plays to the movie's credit. I guess the thing that is odd to me in that is that if he's the avenging angel and I guess if it seems like there's so close of a setup that people should have been a little bit more suspicious. Like it might have been his brother. I just, there's no, because if he looks relatively close to him and he comes into town and he's an awesome shot, it seems a little weird that people didn't try to make that happen in their heads.
I think that adds to like the ghost story element of it, or at least I think that's what Eastwood is trying to do. I don't necessarily, I think the conversation we're having around it signifies that it's not entirely successful, whatever he's trying to fixate on, but
I guarantee you all are thinking way harder about it than anyone in this movie did. I think if it's an old Western campfire fable, which is kind of how it presents itself, then it doesn't matter. I mean, it's an absurdist, dark comedy anyway. And if this was presented as a story that you were reading or being told, I don't think that aspect of it really matters at all, just because it's presented as a film.
Yeah, and then it's also a morality play that Rod Serling could have written at some point, of all these people and their selfish self-interest, that even though they might claim to be law and order, when it comes to their own financial interests, they're okay seeing a marshal being killed.
Yeah.
And that can kind of blind a person in a very Rod Serling kind of way.
And
there you go.
I do think, to your point, Jack, I mean, I almost think the ideas that Eastwood is trying to fit into this movie are bigger than the package, and maybe he doesn't even have a handle on them yet, because, I mean, he makes Pale Rider and then he makes Unforgiven again, and on this rewatch of High Plains Drifter, I just saw all of the ways that Unforgiven is a callback to this specific film and all the different crossover points, and it seems like that is the message that he was trying to put in here, and he just didn't have a handle on it yet,
Yeah, agreed, especially with Pale Rider 2, the sequel.
Damn it. Is that what Unforgiven's first draft title was?
Yes, but when we watched Pale Rider, if you want to go back and listen to that episode, highly recommended.
Great movie.
That's what I felt about that film, is that it almost seemed like maybe an apology for High Plains Drifter, because it's literally the exact same story, but PG-13.
Yeah, 100% less sexual violence.
Yes. And much better. I think it's a much better movie for it.
I also
Alex Cox, during the commentary, which we recorded, seems like recently in a cabin in Oregon, said that it's a gothic western. You don't see many of those.
yeah.
Yes.
That's brilliant.
I think that's a perfect summary. And I think part of the difference too between High Plains Drifter and Pale Rider is Eastwood, became a Republican, and High Plains Drifter, in addition to referencing High Noon and the Tin Star and all of these other classic films, there's a real Vietnam energy in here. And I think that's part of the sexual assault and his brutality as a character is like, amplifying that energy from Vietnam. And later with Pale Rider, you have Reagan, and Eastwood's feeling pretty good about being a Republican and the muscle of the U.S. presenting in the world. And I'm not saying that he's consciously thinking, I'm going to make a movie about foreign policy, but I think the way he feels about the projection of force and its use and utility might have changed in between these two movies.
Yeah, and you have all the fire that could be napalm.
Yeah, I think I think there's a lot of the ugliness of this movie is a reflection of the time.
Okay, to answer that question that you just sent to the group chat, Thomas, our dog is trying to bury, I think, like a piece of food or something. I can put a stop to this.
It's not paperwork.
Are you going to eat it?
He's putting it in a plastic bag. He's got his head stuffed in it.
Jack or the dog? Where are we right now?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's more of a dogfight for the food.
Yeah.
But not on planes. It's like a large Ranchera dog fight.
Okay.
Back paperwork done.
If you don't want to get acquainted, why didn't you say so? And we're back.
So why did Cox do a commentary on this? What's the reason?
Alex Cox.
Nothing else going on?
Yeah, unfortunately. He's written a Western book on, I think it's called like 10,000 Ways to Die in the West or something. That's similar to the title, if that's not the exact title. And Kino, and their and their Blu-ray release, which is available through the Multnomah County Library.
Shout out.
Has a track of him covering the movie, which I think I complained about last episode. I'm sorry, last time we covered this movie. Eastwood doesn't have commentary tracks on most of his films.
No.
So somebody needed to do it. That somebody was our favorite punk rock British director, Alex Cox.
Who made one of the best Westerns, not The Hotel, but one of the best Western movies, which we're going to be covering next season on Squib Season.
Oh, yeah?
And something
Walker.
Pretty
Walker.
inspired by the
I love Walker.
tone of this, I think.
Yeah, totally.
Walker has a little bit of this tone, yeah.
It totally does.
One of the things so this is what Alex Cox says about the rape that happens. He says, some of these things you judge by their time.
Mm-hmm.
This was a popular trope of their time. Then he says, as you have one of the gratuitous shots from between Eastwood's legs as he's buckling his belt back up, post-coital dressing he says, well, this is just crude. Because the shot is like from between his legs of her face. And then he says, it is hard to discuss these scenes in an enthusiastic way.
Mm-hmm. Indeed.
Wow.
So a little bit of an understatement.
Wow. Really huffing that copium.
Well,
yep.
I don't have a problem with the rape scene. I actually don't have a problem with either of the first two rape scenes, but it's the third rape scene that really gets me. And that might sound, I don't know, uncouth, but That's how
Yeah,
I
would you
felt
detail what
watching
those
it.
are for somebody who might not understand what you're saying?
So the first one we already discussed that
Yeah.
a minute into town, he takes a lady into the barn.
Yeah, right after.
And the lady does like bump into him. Not saying like fuck. That started off as like justification.
Well, I think
No.
I think it is presented. I think
But
it's
I think
presented
there is
that
a
way in the
certain-
movie.
I think that the movie does have some semiotics to it that would suggest that she is asking for it.
yes,
Yes.
That is
And
the
she
movie.
enjoys it after.
That is the movie's terribleness for creating that logic behind it.
Yeah.
But I do think that the movie is suggesting that that is what she desires.
So the problem, I don't think, comes with. I think that is a problem, but I do think at this point we are, as an audience, supposed to, whatever supposed to means, not be seeing him as, like I said so many times, I guess, in the original episode, a cool guy. I never think he's presented that way on this rewatch. The second time he does it, it's less of a rape scene, but it's still rape when he forces her to come to dinner with him, and then she willingly sleeps with him only to open the door from the inside so the guys can come beat him to death, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
That, at least in the story, has a logical place to it. But the third scene is with the innkeeper's wife, who he forcibly blocks from leaving the inn after it's blown up and there's only one room left. And then he forces her into that one room, and then he lays down in the bed, and then she tries to attack him with scissors because he goads her into doing it. And then he starts kissing her, and then she gets really into it. And then we cut to the next morning, and they're like, he's getting dressed and she's all lovey-dovey in bed. That's the problem with, my problem at least, with the movie, is that one scene.
100%.
Because the other two, I feel like, are gross and you don't want to see them, but at least they kind of have a justifiable place in the story. But that third one seems to me more of a symptom of how women were generally treated at the time and treated in media. And I don't like it. I think it's gross. I think that's something where anyone who is working on the movie wouldn't see that as necessarily wrong, because that's something that happened in movies all the time, especially you're watching these movies like Hays Code movies where it's like, you can't show someone getting shot, but you can. There's always a guy, whether he pressures the chick to go out to dinner with him, or just go on one date, or stops her from leaving the room so she can sleep with him, and then eventually she ends up liking it.
Yeah.
That's something where I don't feel like anyone in any conception of the story had an idea of how wrong that was.
In addition, Jack, I would say that it's presented as her willful sexual liberation. Like, she attacks him because she wants to sleep with him, because she wants to get free of this oppressive life that she lives.
And it's also,
I obviously do not agree with that depiction or idea of how femininity works, but that's how it's portrayed, I believe.
Yeah, I think the other lady, if you look at overall as like the ghost story, like each person that stood by and did nothing as the dude was getting killed, he all gets revenge in different ways on them that attacks them really where they live.
Yeah.
And the rape stuff is terrible, but from the ghostly part of getting the revenge on her, it makes sense of him as kind of an avenging ghost. And the Vera Miles one is very confused, and I think Jack is right. It's really hard to put in that narrative sense that the other lady is in.
I understand what Jack's saying, that it's symptomatic of the time, and I think that's kind of what Cox was putting his finger on for the initial rape scene. It is, I think, the hard part with this, and I'm not saying what Jack said is invalid. I'm saying I think the hard part of us discussing it in 2025 is that this is a 1970s depiction of femininity and liberation set in the late 1800s.
Right.
And so there's a double embeddedness there, where the 70s depiction of what happened in the past might not be the best, but it is a depiction of what's happening in the past, which might have been liberating for the time.
And there's,
which I guess for me, when I watched it, I was like, oh, she's leaving at the end. She's getting out of the town.
Right.
She's getting rid of the crooks. That's kind of empowering. And that she willingly has sex, to my mind, willingly has sex with Eastwood and is not judged as a vixen or a tramp as the first woman is,
right?
And instead is seen as, oh, she's got her own now. She has confidence to go out and leave this place because of the ghost. That might be empowering in the way that Paint Your Wagon is an interesting movie about a throuple, and they don't put too much emphasis on it.
Yes.
I think that's very interesting, Thomas. Listening back to the episode, the previous episode, and hearing Jack's reaction made me think of a different way to think about something like this. You know, to your point, Thomas, in the early 70s, murder and rape was on the nightly news because of Vietnam, and the crime rate was a level that we have never seen in our lifetimes. It was just a very cruel country in a miserable time. And so it's not to justify these things. And there's no way to look back on these sexual assaults and say, like, oh, you should not be bothered by this because it's just the way it was at the time. But to think about the way the world was and what Americans were seeing. And so to think that this passed for entertainment is a better context for understanding it, and says a lot about maybe the 1970s more than it does about the appropriateness of sexual assault on film, generally speaking, you know.
I had very similar thought that you do, Ryan, because I was placing it in like a 2025 context, and the smallness of the people and their self-interest, obviously in 2025, resonates a lot,
right,
with what's happening right now. But if you turn the clock back to 1972, when this film was probably made, one of the most contentious years until, the last 8 years, in American history, that this feels more like a cultural reflection of that time. And to compare the movies that we get now that maybe are not reflective of the times that we're seeing, on the news every day. It's kind of striking that movies were so reflective and holding up a mirror to the smallness of the small town, because the small town is usually filled with the virtuous and the good, but not this town. I mean, if we look at the townspeople and then take Eastwood out of it, they're all horrible people, with the exception maybe of Bartleby and Vera Miles. Are probably the two that, they're the decent people, but everybody else is horrible.
Yeah, two add-ons to that. One, John Wayne being upset. But let me first say the economy of this town doesn't really make sense to me. How do you have like 12 people in your town and a barber?
That's what I was wondering.
Who's getting, and that barber, I don't know if this is the humor part of it or what, but he has the worst haircut I've ever seen.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a cobbler's kids going without shoes or what it is, but this time I was like, wait, that guy's the barber? He looks like he's been in like a nuclear, survived a nuclear explosion, and I mean he's doing the best he can with his hair.
I didn't know there was a proto Brad Dourif in the world before we got Brad Dourif. This guy, it's like he manifests real Dourif energy.
The second part to that was something that Cox brings up in the commentary track. That I think everybody kind of knows that Rio Bravo was a rebuttal to High Noon. But in the same way that John Wayne did that, and John Wayne was really upset enough about this film that he wrote to Eastwood saying that this isn't the type of people who settled the American West. This isn't how the West was won. So a very similar criticism to High Noon, that these people aren't brave enough to be able to take care of it themselves.
Yeah.
Was it so? That is potentially something that we would be masked with time. Watching it in 2025, where the idea of people standing up for themselves, or I guess probably a little bit more to the cultural memory, especially for a lot more Westerns, the idea of a Native people's attack.
I'm back on board. Any movie that John Wayne hates, good enough for me. This is like when Lars von Trier said something about Steven Spielberg.
What was weird was, I don't know if you've seen John Wayne's final and this is just matches up really well as a coincidence, but John Wayne's final published letter to the editor for the Washington Post was about She-Devil and how much he disliked She-Devil. So we'll save that to talk about that every other week.
What are you talking about? God,
he died like 15 years before She-Devil even came out. I'm calling false.
He had a vision of the devil, and it was she. He saved it. He said, "Publish this posthumously."
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm on Wikipedia right now, editing as we talk.
All right, so I want to know now that Jack had been thinking about this movie for 5 years and it's kind of lived on. What is your reaction to it?
I like it a lot more. I don't know what the fuck my problem was 5 years ago, besides the rape stuff, which is an unfortunate cultural, timely stain on an otherwise very rewatchable movie, I think. But this is probably aesthetically one of my favorite looking and feeling movies that I've ever seen. It really says something how much it stuck with me for 5 years, because there wasn't a lot of this rewatching that I didn't remember. There wasn't a lot of anything that I was surprised by or had forgotten. It really, really stuck with me, especially the scene at the end, the whole climax of the town painted red and at night with the buildings on fire is just one of the most amazing, gorgeous looking things.
Oh, and then one of the guys is in the tavern and then the whip comes in. He
comes out of nowhere.
Yeah. I think on the original episode I said it's like Batman.
Yes. There's real Dark Knight energy to that.
And all the ghostly stuff, I was really surprised this time. Actually, probably the only thing I had forgotten was that I remembered the ghostly stuff as being like a third act reveal. But it's as soon as right after the rape scene, he goes up to the inn and takes a nap, and then it's like, oh, ghost flashback. He's a ghost.
Yeah.
I felt like that was more explicit this time, but maybe it's just because I'd seen it before. I don't know.
Yeah, the music obviously helps. It's a great score, but it definitely gets into the ghostly. This is because of the shots of the first whipping and the people in the shadows. If it was black and white, it would have been gorgeous. It's gorgeous anyway. But after he goes into town, I feel like the camera could pan over to Rod Serling. Saying,
Oh, yeah, 100%.
Yes, Lago.
It definitely...
An average mining town in the Old West, but it hides a lot of deep secrets. One of which is a door to the Twilight Zone. And then as he disappears into the mist, and the camera can pan over and he can give a little summation of how maybe we should work together and not be so selfish and self-interested.
And in the Vietnam War.
Yes.
I think they're actually, because we were calling bullshit on my John Wayne thing. The Twilight Zone ended, I think, 10 years prior to this film coming out. But
Night Gallery. It could have been a movie.
I think on this rewatch, I like the film a little less. One of the things that kind of ruined the film for me is a comment that Ken made last episode. So I'm going to ruin it for other people by repeating it. And that is when he comes into town over the high plains, you look down onto the town and it looks like a Monopoly set because everything's painted red. They look like Monopoly houses. Yeah. And it's hard to unsee that once you have that stuck in your head. So thank you, Ken.
That's funny.
I've always been good about ruining movies. Hey, wait till I talk to you about people holding supposedly full coffee cups, and obviously it's completely empty.
That's empty coffee cup.
What about when it's obviously not Ian McKellen on a horse in Lord of the Rings?
Or when they pick at food and they put it in their mouth, and you know there's nothing they're putting in their mouth. People don't pick at food like they do in movies. They use a big fork and they shove it in their mouth. But in movies, they pick and they hide in the camera like this, and then you know they're not eating anything.
Ask the guy from 2001 what it was like to eat 80 plates of eggs. Nobody should have to eat 80 plates of eggs, not
at the prices we got today.
Oh, wow.
Bazing.
Yeah. We were going to do the Cool Hand Luke challenge here, but who can afford it?
Jack, I understood where you were coming from with your original take, because the badass, like even in the Leone movies, Clint Eastwood's character is always amoral, but he is always kind of the good guy still. And he's very much presented in this movie in that fashion where he could be just a really cool man with no name, and he's going to do some sketchy, questionable stuff, but eventually, he's the good guy and he's going to win. And that's, I can see how that would cause a little cognitive dissonance, because it is so aesthetically awesome, but he is such a shitty character, and nobody in the film is in a moral position to point to him and say, like, this is a terrible person. Nobody should be like that guy. Like, the movie's basically saying, yeah, this is a cool guy, but this is what one of those cool guys would also actually be like.
But I don't know. I think we see Clint, and we see Clint from a perspective, because I'm on a first name basis, from 30 plus years removed from this movie,
right?
And I guess the question is, if you're watching it at the time, or his intention maybe as well, in trying to portray it, is, do you instantly think cool when you see him? And then is he trying to subvert that at all? Because in this film, one of the things I do like a lot about it is that he sets the townspeople up to be killed because they're terrible people.
Yeah, right.
And they killed him, but they killed him because of greed, not for any better reason. And they killed him in a terrible way, being whipped to death. So he's setting everybody up to be killed and taking full advantage of them throughout it, so that at the end, his big move is to just leave. That's great. He says, he paints hell. He gets them all to sit out and welcome back, boys. And he takes off, and the townspeople and the 3 incarcerated people who've been let free, they go at it. They just are able to kill each other. And then he comes in and has his revenge on the 3 people who actually killed him.
Yeah.
That's not heroic. And that might be a cool guy thing at the time. It's hard to say. But it could also be in subverting the idea of a hero in a way that
very very much
that
an anti-hero.
might have been more powerful at the time.
That's what I'm trying to say, is in a way I think this movie and Unforgiven in particular are saying, like, that cool man with no name guy, he's actually this guy. He's actually William Money. He's actually this evil, malicious spirit that'll kill everybody and rape all your women and leave town. Like, that he's reflecting on the lack of heroism in his characters, which, Dirty Harry was cool, and people still watch it and think he's a cool motherfucker. Like, maybe everything is morally disgusting about this character or whatever, but that's a cool guy with that gun right there. And I think he's saying all of these guys that I've played are monsters,
Well, he only made 4 Westerns as a director, and you could definitely see the next one he would make, Outlaw Josie Wales, as more of a character arc where, he's a family man who then goes on revenge against soldiers who killed his family. And then the relationship with Sonderlock that develops is not rapey. And Pale Rider, where he comes into town and, the woman and then the young girl throw themselves at him, and he's like, nah, I'm good. And then Unforgiven, especially where, you could almost say the starting of Unforgiven starts out with a scene of a woman being brutalized. But then it completely subverts what High Plains Drifter was. And I think in a lot of ways, these subsequent Westerns appealed to him because it did have a different angle on his first one, High Plains Drifter, that he directed. So they're all different facets of the same. Unforgiven's obviously the master's thesis of all of it, including the films he made, not as director, but as actor.
Totally.
So the reason that there's concern from the townspeople is that the mine is on government land. Is that, would it be better if it was on sacred native land that was part under treaty or something? Or is government land enough? Would that also give him the ability to come back like in Poltergeist? I'm just wondering where the punch up could happen or where the plot could be. This movie is a little too long. That's something that Cox also says.
Is it?
It feels like it's breezy. A little too long.
I thought it was pretty breezy.
This time it was a bit of a slog for me.
Really, the only time I felt like there was any sort of digression in the story that was unnecessary was the point when Eastwood leaves town, which is the only time we see him outside of the town, when he ambushes the three dudes. I thought that was going to be like, here's a part in the third act where they got extended a little longer, but that was only a few minutes.
Yeah.
I felt like that was kind of strange because up until that point, and this is something that Roger Ebert, to digress a little bit, mentioned in his review of Pale Rider, that he felt the scenes where you see Eastwood as a man in like a shootout or a brawl and not as a straight up ghost or angelic figure cheapen that aspect of the movie a little bit. And that's kind of what I thought during that scene, because it feels like he's so intrinsically as a spirit tied to the town that I was surprised that he's able to leave and come back.
Yeah.
But
same.
I guess that's necessary for the reveal of the Monopoly
Well, I think the
houses.
bigger part. Well, I think the bigger part, like, it seems like he should be confined to the town just by like ghost physics or logic. But seriously, right? Like, you don't haunt wherever you want. But I think the other side to it, I mean, and there also should maybe have been like a holiday, right? Like, it's like a 5-year anniversary of when or I guess a year anniversary after he died or something. It doesn't quite match up with the conviction of the criminals. Or maybe it's like a sacred day that ghosts come back, or there should be something a little bit like that. But the greater part is, the greater loss to me in that is that he goes out there and he shoots at him and then he leaves. There should have been a moment where like, oh, he could have killed any of us. Mm-hmm. There's a moment where he's shot his ear and Jeff Lewis says something like, oh, he could have blown your darn head off. But what he means is there was the potential for him to do so, not that he could have because he's a great shot. And I think that there's a moment that's missing where, wait, so the audience would have to ask, why didn't he kill them then? And the whole reason he doesn't kill them then is so that they come into town and kill the people that he once killed.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
But that's not explicit in the movie. It might be something that Tidyman or the punch-up dude put into the script, and then Eastwood just missed.
Yeah.
I thought he was just riling them up. Like riling up a bunch of dogs.
It's an extra piece of something in there. Like, I don't really need it. I do like that they show the, I don't know who she's pitched up with, but the blonde woman eating fried chicken like a savage. Just going to town like she's been like, she's never seen a knife and a fork in her life.
Yeah, and I also like all the sweat. One of my notes was they got to bring back just normal sweat in movies. Like, nobody sweats in movies anymore unless they're like nervous at a job interview or some bullshit like that. But if it's hot out, people sweat. I don't understand why these old movies, people are just sweaty because they're shooting in the desert.
This made me think of one of those new fucking bullshit Taylor Sheridan Western shows. Yeah. Where it's like they're all clean and they're wearing these brand new costumes because they got to return them at the end of the day.
Right. Or Horizon, directed by Kevin Costco.
Yes.
Where the prostitute somehow
which
has
part?
Part 1. Who has time to curl her hair every day. And she forces herself onto the main character, which is somehow even worse. Anyway, I digress.
He's so good that he's half asleep and she still gets off.
Oh my god.
He doesn't even have to wake up.
So
it's amazing.
Stupid. Terrible
Wait,
movie.
Postman?
Epic film.
It feels like the spiritual sequel to Postman. Horizon, Part 1.
Here's something I thought of.
Yes.
The whole ghost thing of this ghost really wants to subvert all these expectations as a ghost would, I presume. And so he turns the town upside down. He makes the little guy both sheriff and mayor. He gives away free booze to everyone. He commandeers the hotel and then blows it up.
He gives a whole jar of candy, 2 jars of candy.
So this is what I'm getting at.
Okay.
The only people he's really nice to are, to an extent, Vera Miles, the little guy, and then this Native American dude with 2 little kids in the shop, right? He gives him a pile of blankets, and he gives the 2 little kids each a big jar of candy, right?
Yeah.
Now, when we came to America, not us, but white people in general, we gave the Native Americans blankets laced with smallpox in a probably intentional way to kill a bunch of them off, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Now, a lot of Native Americans historically have been forced onto reservations and given, at the bare minimum, if anything, the cheapest bottom of the barrel food stamps, cheapest, most disgusting food you can buy. Candy and blankets. I don't know if that's intentional or if I'm reading way too much into it.
No, they were looking at things they needed but couldn't afford, and the shopkeeper was like disgusted by them, and that was the ghost.
But I'm saying subtextually, like even if they weren't thinking about it at the time.
I don't think Eastwood has ever thought that deeply about that kind of thing. It was just like it was like getting at the man. It was more about the man who was represented by the shopkeeper than it had to do.
But I don't think anything this ghost can do is good on any level, even if he's trying to do good.
Yeah. Oh, you're saying that he ruins everybody's life?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. So both those little kids got diabetes and their teeth rotted out, and the blankets had smallpox. That's what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying.
Okay.
I think there's, and I'm not saying that Eastwood intended this whatsoever, but considering the role that Westerns played in society and litigating domestic issues and foreign policy throughout the 50s and 60s, I think you can read this as a metaphor for Vietnam. And like, he is the ghost, he is the vengeful spirit that the Vietnamese hire in one view of what's gone on in that war, to come and clear out the communists. And he's like way worse for everybody. He fucks everything up and then he just fucking leaves. And that's what we did. And I don't know, most of that was done under Democrats, so it doesn't really jibe with, it doesn't counteract Eastwood's personal politics to portray America at that time in this manner. But I have no idea whether any of that was intended or not, for sure.
Yeah, it definitely could have been subtextual in the original scripts, but I guarantee you Eastwood never talked about that on the set.
I don't think he talks about anything.
No,
except win lunches and.
No, he was talking about setups and getting through the day. I mean, this was the start of him. What, his second film? This and Breezy. He was like TV Eastwood, like getting stuff done ahead of time, getting stuff under budget. So he was just moving to the next setup.
Wait, is this the first film he directed, or is that
Play Misty?
Okay, yeah.
Are any of
that's Breezy, and then this?
Are any of his other films this surreal?
No.
The Beguiled, directed by Donald Siegel.
Oh, okay.
Probably
not. Are you saying any movies that he's directed or this?
No.
That was specifically, but answering with The Beguiled was a good.
This is like his only horror movie. If you look at it as a horror movie, it's his only one.
Oh yeah, that's.
What about the one with Angelina Jolie and the child?
That's a different Changeling.
Oh, he didn't direct that?
No, you're thinking of the George C. Scott Changeling, where there's a ball rolling down the hallway and nobody else is there. Pretty scary. That's a scary movie.
This is something I wanted to mention. I know it's been talked to death before by middle-aged white dudes of the podcast, or young white dudes of the podcast, Thomas and I.
Thanks. Representation.
The horror Western is a genre that is ripe for the picking, so to speak, and there's definitely not enough of it, and this is up there in the top 3 that I've seen for sure.
Oh, wait,
also,
what else?
Well, I was going
to
say science fiction westerns, which Wild Wild West, Jonah Hex.
Cowboys versus
good
aliens.
stuff.
Cowboys versus aliens.
That
might be the worst genre.
Yeah, it's pretty. I haven't seen Bone Tomahawk, but my favorite Western is probably Ravenous.
Yeah, I've heard that one's good. I gotta.
Oh, that's a good one too. Yeah.
Oh, The Nightingale, the Australian one.
Oh, I haven't seen that.
That one's really good.
Isn't that also like very torturous? A lot of rape, a lot of murder.
No, there's one rape scene in the beginning. It's a female directed rape revenge movie. It's very.
I only remember the reviews that came out, and why I didn't see it was I heard it was all just rape and colonial butchery.
It's intense, more I think emotionally exhausting than it actually is explicit.
Sure, that makes sense.
But great movie.
Yeah.
Okay. Put that on your list.
So High Plains Drifter. What scene would be best if there was a rat in a pocket? Everyone.
I'm sorry, could Margaret Thatcher tell us?
Oh, okay.
Are we going to bring them all back?
Do we have a bit that we're doing for the Redux season at the end?
Hello? Did someone say my name? It's me, the
Hey,
ghost of
Maggie!
Margaret Thatcher.
Maggie, welcome back!
Hello? High Plains Drifter.
I'm not doing this again.
We're not doing what again?
The saloon scene where the little fella gets made mayor is has always reminded me of the Bob Dylan song Ballad of a Thin Man. That just like this crazy ass, you're in this bar and everything gets turned upside down, like Thomas was saying about
Bob Dylan from the movie A Complete Unknown.
yes. Timmy
and Pat Garrett and Billy the Kid.
Oh yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
You just told me that yesterday.
Yeah, great movie.
So I guess our bit for this season is what Bob Dylan song fits best for this movie. There we have it.
Okay. Is that it?
How would this movie work if
is...
Roseanne Barr played the High Plains Drifter?
It wouldn't.
It wouldn't.
Thomas?
I'm sorry. What's the question? My brain just kind of there's like a fuse in my head that sometimes when you say certain things, Ryan.
Which character would Roseanne Barr improve had she played that character? I'm going to go with the original Marshall.
Okay. I kind of want to see her as Malachi.
Yeah,
that would even call him Bartleby, but as Clint Eastwood's sidekick, especially the moment where like he picks Malachi up and sets him on the bar.
Yeah,
that would be an interesting moment.
Roseanne Barr played the whole movie on her knees,
just bar on bar.
Wait, what?
Oh, like tiptoes.
Wait, what?
Yeah, like
tiptoes.
Yeah, Roseanne Barr.
Okay.
Roseanne Barr is Malachi the little person.
I think she would have brought a little bit more brass and really punched things up the comedy on it.
Yeah, agreed.
And her and Clint afterwards could talk about QAnon.
Yes.
I don't think he knows. I think he's too old for that.
All right. Is that it for High Plains Drifter?
Woo.
Damn. Well done, guys. Under an hour.
I mean, it seems like we're... Yeah,
it helps.
I was surprised we were able to talk about it for this long. And then you can just talk about talking about the movie.
Yes.
It also helps if you have an interlude where you're fighting a dog.
Yeah.
For food.
That's pretty grim. We're gonna go out to the living room, and Watson's gonna have painted the living room red.
Welcome to hell.
This is part 1 of 2, paired with Death Becomes Her, which we are going to be discussing
She-Devil.
So thank you to Weird AI for the theme song, Ryan. Thank you.
You're welcome. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we on socials still?
We have social accounts activated and post-fascist social accounts. So we have a Blue Sky and a Letterboxd. You can also find us on Instagram if you're still hanging out with Zux.
Yeah.
Oh, and Telegram and Signal and Truth.
We're launching Truth Social with a meme coin this week. The GPU meme.
Nice. All right. Tune in next week. Death Becomes Her.
Yeah, get the pig shit out of your ears.
I'm not I don't want to hear about you. I want to hear from you.
That's 10-4.
10-4, buddies. Destroy. Kill all hippies.
I don't hate it. I just don't know why you strayed from the formula.
You bastards. You don't know it, Bob. I'm an artist. And I must reflect that in my rhyme.
New opinion.
Sure.
It is hard to discuss these scenes in an enthusiastic way.
Any movie that John Wayne hates, good enough for me.